I hate you for what you did, and I miss you like a little kid. I fainted every time, but that's alright. I can hardly feel anything, hardly feel anything at all. You gave me 1,500 to see your hypnotherapist. I only went one time, but that's alright. Hello, King Bugs. We're not going to be online for as long as we normally would for a normal stream tonight because I'm trying to keep my sleep schedule somewhat reasonable and rational. So, although I'm not that tired yet, and that's usually not a good sign when I try to go to sleep even though I'm not really tired. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm just manic. I don't know. Like, maybe I'm going through... I think I need therapy. Or like a psychiatrist or something, because I don't know, I will go through periods of time lasting usually a number of weeks. Thank you $10, or thank you King Bugs for the $10. Thank you $10 for the King Bugs. But I will go through these periods lasting between like 1 to 2, sometimes 3 weeks, where I'm just like very disconnected and numb and kind of like irritable and sometimes sad. And I will want to sleep a ton during those times. And then I'll have like a week or two of normalcy, seeming normalcy, and then it starts to like peak towards a crescendo. And during those periods of time, I can find it really difficult to maintain a good sleep schedule. So the older I get, the more I think maybe I just need to find like a mental health medication that would address that directly. It's okay, you're just going slowly insane. Yeah, that's probably the truth of the matter. Probably just slowly going a little crazy. Hello, everybody. Hello, welcome. I had one of those horrible I'm at work dreams last night. Yeah. That's usually a sign you've been working too much. But sometimes it can happen right after a vacation, which sucks. But yeah, those dreams suck. Especially if it happens on like a day off, but honestly it sucks even when it's a work day, because then you wake up and realize, oh no, it was a dream, but it wasn't a dream. I have to go to work. You know, I have never had not one dream about streaming. There we go. Just got here. You're mourning the death of a human being as well. Very glad to hear that. The death celebration TikToks are really cringe. I gotta be honest with you. I'm not mourning the death of Lindsey Graham. I'm, if anything, mourning his life and the legacy he left behind. Let's not forget that Lindsey Graham was one of the primary authors of America's really hard right shift, especially on foreign policy, over the last 20 years. He was basically one of the people that took up the mantle of the neoconservative. Like, that's one of the reasons why he was such a convenient replacement to Strom Thurmond, this segregationist, traditional conservative that didn't really represent the foreign policy interests that the neocons wanted in power in the early 2000s. And that's where he got so much of his legacy from, and what his legacy has done to this planet is reprehensible. What he's done to this country is reprehensible. I mean, he has consistently voted against the interests of groups that he's almost certainly a part of. He is almost certainly, was almost certainly a gay man. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I do think there's something wrong with being gay and remaining closeted in a time when you don't have to, and also voting against people. Like, at least if you're going to vote against gay interests, at least come out and fucking, like, at least be honest about where your motivations are coming from and how they affect you personally. We never got that dialectic out of Lindsey Graham, and now we'll never get it. So I guess maybe I can see how the death sucks on some level. It definitely probably sucks for his family. He was only 71, and that's not a particularly old age for an old man to die. So it probably sucks for his family, but I didn't know the man as anything other than one of the decrepit old senators who pushed America into more and more foreign policy adventurism and wars that are endless and unfruitful and last forever. I remember him most aptly as an old decrepit senator that is responsible for authoring that policy and discriminatory policies here in America, and not just authoring them, but supporting them throughout his life. Okay, you disagreed with his politics, but like I will never be seen celebrating deaths of like Hillary or Biden or Pelosi, etc. They're still people. Well, yeah, I'm not well, okay, I did kind of celebrate his death when it happened because it is kind of a relief to know that there is like a higher chance that that seat will be more competitive next time. I think that he probably would have won that election pretty handily, as incumbents typically do in places where they're well liked, and Lindsey Graham was well liked in his little area. So like, I guess there's an element of celebration the way I look at it, but ultimately I'm less concerned about celebrating his death and like being super glad he's dead, and more concerned about like mourning the many losses of life that he caused, and the fact that there will never be any kind of retribution for that. There will never be any kind of justice for that at this point. He will never be able to disavow any of the things that he's engaged in or any of the people he's helped discriminate against. Thank you, King Bugs, for the $50. I appreciate that a ton. That definitely helps make up for the fact that I haven't streamed in like 24 hours. I want to hear about movies or TV, not this boring shit. We'll go find somebody else talking then. Lots of people doing this exact same type of format on YouTube. Lots of them talk about pop culture topics. Sometimes I talk about pop culture topics, but I'll be honest, I don't watch as many movies as a lot of people do these days. I don't watch as much TV as a lot of people do these days. I don't even watch as much YouTube as some people do. So frankly, I'm not that good a commentator at pop culture shit. Not to say there's anything wrong with it. I love music. Music I can talk about, I would say, pretty well. And I'm, usually pretty up to date on what's going on in the music scene. Movies and TV, less so. Books, less so, even more than that. I've got some stuff that I like to read, and I'm always happy for another suggestion. And I'm always trying to broaden that library. But, yeah. No, I'm definitely not the commentator if that's the type of content you're looking for. Side comment, never had nightmares about streaming either. Hundreds of nightmares about the jobs, never realized it before your comment. Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Well, that's one of the reasons why I think that the streaming has, well, that's one of the ways that I can tell, I should say, that streaming has been a lot easier on my mental health and a lot better for my life, is because I no longer have like horrible nightmarish dreams about doing the thing that I do to pay my bills. Set this up here so I can see what's going on. I was gonna ask if you like Trump or Kamala, but it's pretty obvious. Oh, is it obvious that I dislike both of them? Is it obvious that I didn't think we had like a good candidate in 2024? Is that obvious to you? Just wondering. I'm the crazy anarchist Fox News told you to be so scared of. I don't vote Democrat unless there's one that I like, and I don't vote Republican, ever. I do participate in direct action whenever the opportunity presents itself. I do participate in protest activism. And I do make my arguments loudly and passionately to whoever will listen. Yellow teeth? Get a real long look. Get a real long look. Take a picture if you want. You think I'm fucking insecure about my teeth? At least they're all there. I know tons of people that are approaching their 30s that are already missing teeth, that already got partials and shit. Every tooth in my fucking head is one that, well, not that I was born with, but, well, I guess, aren't you technically born with the teeth? They just don't grow. I forget. But basically, I've never had a tooth pulled. At least not an adult tooth. I think I had to have some teeth pulled when I was a little kid, like kid teeth. But I've never had a cavity as an adult. Never had to have a root canal or anything like that. Never had to have any fucking significant work done on my teeth. I don't even have to have my wisdom teeth taken out. Although they were hurting quite a bit a few months ago, so it's still one of those things when I get health insurance, I still plan to do it. But even they haven't caused me any major issues yet. Phoebe, I mentioned earlier, but I do frequent other trans folks' channels, and your public chat is uniquely awful. I think that part of that has to do with the environment I cultivate here, the fact that I put right in the title, Transfemme Lefty versus Maga Chuds. That tends to attract, I think, a certain thing out of YouTube's algorithm. It's also the fact that I kind of run a anything goes kind of chat, except for like egregious violations of the YouTube terms of service, shit like that. Like stuff we gotta ban, we ban. Spammers, shit like that. For the most part, though, we let people have their opinions, and I use them as fodder to debunk conservative talking points and shit like that. Plus, I think, I'm not gonna lie, I think part of it's the fact that depending on what I'm wearing and what angle the camera's at, I don't always pass that well. And I don't voice train, so a lot of people are thrown off by the deepness of my voice, even though I personally am not, I don't think I have a masculine voice, but, I've been banned plenty of times in here, probably for attention seeking though. We will ban someone for attention seeking, like they're repeating the same message over and over again, if they're Jesus spamming, there's stuff like that we'll ban people for. But merely for being a chud, not usually. I don't support gay marriage at all. Yeah, John? Well, who cares? Just being for real, who cares? Why should you not liking it dictate what other people get to do with their lives and what contracts they get to enter into? People are often impacted by my deep voice as well. Well, I'll tell you this, hear me out. I met Paul Zigo at the Deep Fat Fried meetup last year, and I will never forget when he walked up to me, because I've always heard Paul over the microphone and stuff, and settings are designed to not, to even people's voices out to some degree. And I will never forget, dude, he sounded like the Allstate guy. I just see this figure kind of walking up the line and kind of getting behind where we're at, and then I hear, BB! And I'm looking around for an 8-foot tall black Allstate guy, and I'm like, oh shit, it's Paul! Paul, what's up? And he's like, hey, yeah, I just noticed you're over here. I just wanted to say hi. What's up? I think he was actually inviting me back to his smoking circle, but I didn't catch the drift, and I was mid-conversation with some people in the line, so. Still, though, that was shocking. Absolutely shocking. I have to up-pitch my voice in normal conversation, otherwise people say they can't understand me. Holy shit, King Bugs. Holy shit. That's crazy. I've met a few people in my life, Paul being one of them, an old coworker I had from a seafood restaurant I used to work at years ago being another. But I've had a few people that I've met in my life that had just like abnormally, unusually deep voices. And it is always kind of jarring, you know, because like there is like a standard accepted range that people expect to hear in conversation. Can you play Misty Mountain Hobbit song? I don't know if I can play it, but I think I can sing it. Oh, far over the misty mountains cold, through dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away at break of day to find our long forgotten gold. The pines were roaring on the height, the winds were moaning in the night, the fire was red, it flaming spread, the trees like torches blaze with light. Oh shit. Are we back? Okay, cool. Stram back. I don't know why it went crazy there for a minute. I have no idea. That was weird. We so back. Lag spike. Hell yeah. Right on. Sorry about that, y'all. I gotta say, one of the things that's great about streaming on my desktop whenever I'm able to is the fact that I have finally made a bunch of upgrades to that PC that, you know, fingers crossed as of right now, makes it incredibly, incredibly good at streaming without any lag spikes. Because number one, it's running on a solid state drive, an M2 drive specifically. And number two, it's got an Ethernet cable ran from the router, which is all the way in the middle of the house, or the modem rather. The modem and router all the way in the fucking middle of the house. So I ran a 50-foot long Ethernet cable all the way from that router on the ceiling with command hooks and shit all the way back to my bedroom that is also like my streaming area when I'm inside. And all the way down to the PC, and now it's wired in. What are your pronouns? She, her, hers. Thank you for asking. Jesus Christ is life? I thought he was dead. Isn't that the whole idea? Well, wasn't that the whole point of stringing him up on a cross in the first place? Was, you know. Please detail the PC upgrades. I love that ish. Alright, fine, cool. We'll do it. We'll do it. Alright, so I went from, I took an HP pre-built gaming PC, a TG01 if you want to look at the exact model. I took an HP TG01 and I upgraded it from 8 gigabytes of RAM and 4 gigabytes of video RAM with a much cheaper, smaller, less capable card and everything, to now it's got 32 gigabytes DDR4 RAM, 16 gigabytes on the Radeon 9060 XT card that I put in it. It's got an OEM HP power supply upgrade that is designed to fit in the same form factor as the old power supply, because they use really weird form factors and shit on those HP gaming pre-builds, but that provides more power for all the components that I need. It's got the HP pin out and everything too, which is nice. So it's got that. Oh, and now I've got a 1 terabyte hard disk drive and a 2 terabyte NVMe M2 SSD. What is the CPU? The CPU is honestly the biggest bottleneck at this point. It's I believe it's an AMD Ryzen 5 6-core. Oh my god, why are there so many Jesus spammers in chat? I am not a believer in Jesus. I was raised in the Pentecostal church, and it was my mother, my wonderful, wonderful mother, who first taught me at 12 years old that you didn't have to believe in a religion if you didn't want to. Are we lagging out again? We're not lagging out, but it does say unstable connection, and I just keep thinking, like, maybe I should switch over to my phone's hotspot. I know, Phoebe, like I said, why is your chat such ass? Good question. I don't know. Like I said, I know part of the reason. I know some of the reasons, but I feel like I genuinely don't know most of the reasons, you know? Like, I just genuinely don't know what most of the reasons are. Like, because I've obviously got a handle on some of them. Some of them are predictable and easy to figure out, but what brings the weirdo Christians? I couldn't tell you. Other Transfemme streamers, some of which pass just as well or just as badly as I do, and, you know, however you want to see it, and, like, they don't have chats that are as toxic as mine. Now, I think what a lot of them do is they probably lock their chat down a bit more, so, like, watch this. I'll make this chat a little less toxic for you guys in real time. Watch. Participant mode subscribers, and we'll do a 20-second message delay, and that will allow most of the... What the fuck was that? That's the wrong thing. That will allow most of the mods to catch spammers, most of the spammers and stuff, before they ever have a chance to send their bullshit, and you will now see the chat get a lot better as a result. But yeah, to finish up what I was saying, now that the lag spike seems to have passed, I'm not a Christian. I will never be a Christian again. I was raised in the Pentecostal church until I was about 12 or 13 when I started having severe nightmares and daytime anxiety episodes and panic episodes about the concept of hell, at which point my wonderful darling mother sat me down and explained to me the concept that there are all kinds of religions on this planet, that even different varieties of Christian don't believe the same thing about hell, that Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, the church that she was raised up in, believed that hell was a grave, and that the predestined might get to go to heaven, but that everybody would eventually be brought back to live in forever in the fucking apocalypse world or whatever, right? They had their own crazy theology that she explained to me. And at the end of that conversation, I remember asking, so which one's correct? And she was like, nobody knows. Living your life like any one of them is 100% correct, though, tends to make people pretty miserable. And it was that made me start looking into other religions. And the more I looked into, the less I found worth believing in. And it wasn't until I happened upon secular humanism and the ideals that can be argued for and synthesized in a secular society that I started to understand, wait a minute, we don't even need all this religious baggage. Then the mechanisms of control started to become obvious. Then the mechanisms by which these things and these impulses in human beings are manipulated started to become obvious. And once you've pulled that many layers back off the cheesecake, off the lasagna, like after you've done that many layers, you can't just pile all the pasta back on and spread the meat and cheese back out and act like you've got a coherent dish there. It's like the phrase, you can never go home. It is possible to lose your faith and regain it, but it is not possible to deconstruct your faith and regain it. I did not lose my faith. I deconstructed it. I will never have it again, because I will never be able to unsee what I have seen. I will never be able to unlearn what I have learned. And this is something that happens to tons of people who are deeply religious. If you don't believe me, look into a guy named Matt Dillahunty. Matt Dillahunty was raised Southern Baptist, not too dissimilar to the way I was raised, but way, way, way more religious. His grandmother and his parents both thought he was going to be a pastor when he was growing up. He even considered going into seminary. He served in the military and lived an incredibly honorable, virtuous life. He's been a feminist from fucking way back. And that guy is one of the most powerful and convincing voices for secular humanism that exists on this platform. And his story is all about getting to the age where religion stopped providing good answers and wanting desperately to find those good answers again, and looking into the religion of his raising and finding that the answers simply aren't there, that they weren't appearing to him because they simply were not in the book, they were not in the dogma, they were not in the doctrine, they were not available to be learned. They were not there, simply put. And this is a story that has happened to 1 million people. Lag spike? Yet another lag spike? Let me see here. Run speed test on your internet for under 50 Mbps upload. You need to reduce your bitrate under 3K or 720p. Also reset your modem and router before streaming. Yeah, I'm not streaming on a computer right now. I'm streaming on an iPhone. So there's not really much about the bitrate setting I can change, I don't think. Well, actually, no, I think I can. I think I can limit it on this, but what I think I'll do is I'll turn on my hotspot and then I'll switch where this is getting its Wi-Fi signal from. Testing. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, I don't know if I can control it. Quality is bad tonight. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, guys. Fuck, I don't know what to do. I guess we're just gonna have to wing it, and I'm sorry if it's laggy and glitchy, because I don't know what else to do. I kill the camera maybe, but I don't think I can do that from Prism Studio. I don't think I'm able to do that. Okay, yeah, I am. Okay, how are we now? How is it now? Yeah, no, I know you guys can't see me, but one of Hear Me Out's suggestions was to turn off the camera and see if that helps. So I'm just turning off the camera to see if that helps. I don't know. I guess I could go look at the Wi-Fi extender and see if it's having problems, but in the 2 or so months I've had it, it's never had any issues. So I don't know why it would be. They changed the streaming resolution of YouTube video and iPhone video let's play. Yeah, no. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's return the camera back on, and we're gonna see how it does now. We're gonna see if there's like a real strong dip. Okay, it's dipping down to 20, 17, 26, 13, 76, 10. Why? Why is it doing me like this? I flatly don't understand why it's doing me like this. Whatever, dude. We're just gonna fucking wing it. We're gonna try and hope for the stream to, you know, work somewhat. Matt says I should reset my phone, but I think we should keep on until there's another lag spike. Yeah, I think we should wait until there's another lag spike, if there is another lag spike. I hate how that kind of like ruined the conversation though. Well, I don't know. I don't see how that could, well, I just don't know, dude. It could be that the Wi-Fi is just having problems. I do live in the Deep South, and shit does just randomly fuck up around here, so it could just be that the internet's having a hiccup tonight. Because I've got fiber, so, like, speeds shouldn't be an issue, but I don't know, maybe infrastructure maintenance or something I don't understand. I mean, I guess it could be on my end, but it would be strange that it would happen tonight and not any other night, you know? Like, if it was just a problem with my phone constantly trying to spit out too high a bitrate for the connection, I would expect it to be a problem every time I streamed on my iPhone, but it's not. It's just, tonight it seems to be glitching out. Charleston all with the fucking unbelievable. Haven't seen you in here in a while. You know, sometimes I wonder if you're an all to Paul's egos, because that's one of his catchphrases too. I sent you Trump news. Trump news, Trump news, Trump news, Trump news, Trump news. Let's see what the orange moron did today. Alrighty, are we ready? E. Jean Carroll is paid $5.6 million in Trump's sex abuse and defamation case. From WTOP News. I guess it's also from the AP. The writer E. Jean Carroll has collected over $5.6 million that a jury awarded her in her sexual abuse and defamation lawsuit against President Trump, court records and her lawyers said. The payment, representing the $5 million jury award plus interest, was made Monday from an account where it had been held in escrow since the 2023 verdict, according to court records. Carroll's lawyer, Roberta Kaplan, confirmed the payment Tuesday. We are pleased to report that she has received the damages payment. Kaplan said in a statement. Carroll herself later wrote on Substack that the eagle has landed. The eagle has landed. Interesting turn of phrase. Anyway, Trump's lawyers have vowed to continue appealing. How would they even do that? Like, what? Like, isn't it settled at this point? I feel like at the point when it's not even in the escrow anymore, but it's already been, like, given to the plaintiff, or that's who it is, right? Let me make sure. Yeah. So, like, if the money's already been awarded to the plaintiff, then, like, how the fuck, like, it's not even in escrow anymore. How the fuck would you get it back? Like, is there a mechanism by which that can happen? I feel like that's got to be some form of, like, double jeopardy or something, right? No? I don't know. Yeah, so I need to go back to the live ready screen. Yeah, so that's another limiting factor. I'd have to restart the stream. I don't know, it seems to be working now, though. I assume it's already been dispersed. Well, that's what we were just reading, is that the payment just got made recently. It does suck that the lag spike kind of took us out, ended our interesting conversation. Oh. Okay, hear me out. No, I believe that you're probably correct. I don't understand why it's never been an issue before tonight is all. I'm new to politics, but I've learned a lot from streamers like you. Well, thank you. But also, I will tell you, make sure that you're reading some primary sources as well. And some secondary sources as well. And even reading some polemics wouldn't hurt you. For reading recommendations, one of the first places I always recommend people start if they're interested in learning about politics and the relationship between people and power, honestly, I would recommend starting with a People's History of the United States, and then maybe reading some of the critiquing works, and some of the histories that Howard Zinn, the author of A People's History, relies on himself to make the accounts. Like some of the accounts that are cited, the diaries of oh fuck, I can't remember his name, but there was a monk who was on Christopher Columbus's journey to the New World, who wrote pretty disparagingly of Columbus's conquests in the region, and of the absolutely brutal treatment with which they dealt with the native population. And I believe that the writings of that individual are available for free online in uploaded PDF form. And that's just one example of a place where you can find his words quoted a lot in a lot of different histories, but you can also go read that account yourself and see how someone who had first-hand exposure to the genocide of the Native Americans in its earliest beginnings felt about it, and what they perceived as going on. And you know, like, that's not the only example, obviously. It's just like the one that came to my mind first. You could also read the many and lurid accounts of workers on the Union lines from now to the fucking earliest beginnings of the American Union movement, the labor movement here in America. It's got a long and lurid history, as I said, and many of those first-hand accounts are still widely available. But yeah. Matt, it's not a mystery. Y'all pooping because RFK approved gray water for crops, sewage on crops. Yep. 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 And I'm just gonna be real with you. Under the Trump and fucking RFK administration, how would we be able to trust that anyway? But also, like, how the fuck do they know it's gray water? We don't separate gray water and fucking... Like, most buildings in the United States, as far as I know, do not separate gray water and, like, actual sewage. What is it called? Black water or some shit? I forget what it's called. But, like, we don't separate those things out. Maybe apartment buildings do. Maybe, like, commercial complexes do. Maybe there's some places that are set up to do it. I don't know. But I ain't never heard about that shit. The only time I've ever heard about that stuff being separated is in places where there was some specific project to use the gray water and, like, divert it and use it differently, and then treat the actual sewage. But maybe there's something about that situation I don't understand. In theory, properly treated gray water should be okay for lots of situations, but I get the impression that they're not. Because, like, if they're using it for fertilizer, they're definitely not treating it, because that would probably denature a lot of the things, or off-gas a lot of the things that would improve the soil by its usage. And gray water, even though it's not being used for, like, shit and piss, I mean, like, it's still got chemicals in it. And I know everything is chemicals, but I mean, it's still got, like, synthetics, like, weird synthetic things, and, like, surfactants and shit that are used in soap. Just seems like something you wouldn't want to be spraying on crops in the first place, just because of the nature of what's in it, or what could be in it. But I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, and I have to believe somewhere in my heart that even RFK was not so stupid that he would approve the sight unseen use of whatever's passing for gray water in any given area on crops, but man, it wouldn't be that far out of character, would it? Oh God, the more I think about this, the fucking creepier and scarier it gets. How about this? How about we just not use like uncomposted or unprocessed? Like, how about we just don't use that shit on our crops that are being produced at mass scale? Like, what's the problem with that? Like, why do we have to spray shit on the crops? I'll give you an answer. We don't. I don't even get it, man. Well, I do, but I'm so disgusted with what the real answer is that I don't want to admit it to myself. Because the real answer behind all of this is financialization and the enshittification of society from kind of what just is starting to seem to me like a collective throwing up of the arms, a collective shrug at the inability of all of us to change anything. And sort of just a sad collective sigh as we slip into autocracy and autarky. And I just don't know exactly how far this is supposed to go before people start to wake up and smell the fucking roses. We don't even need mass agriculture as a concept to survive as a species, number one. We certainly don't need it on the scale that we have it today. The only reason we need as much agriculture as we have is largely to sustain the completely endless appetites of the billionaire class and generally the wealthy and privileged in countries where food scarcity isn't really much of a thing if you make more than however much, like as long as you're making the standard cost of living in your area, right? Food scarcity is really only a thing for the poor and those living in countries that are basically kept poor nationally. We have more than enough food to feed everybody on this planet, and even then we could still afford to scale back the farms. We could still afford to transition a lot of agriculture into people's backyards and into gardens surrounding their apartment complexes and stuff like that. It's there. The resources are there. The collective willingness to apportion them appropriately is growing, but has not reached critical mass yet. Do you think we should be more scared of microplastics? I don't think we should be more scared of them. I think that we should be, well, I guess yes, but not. Like, I don't think we should be more scared of them because that tends to elicit the wrong response. I think we need to be responsible about our management of the planet, which includes recognizing that microplastics are an issue and that they're an issue that is going to continue to get worse as long as we're making tons of our clothes out of plastic. That's the main reason that, like, microplastics are generated. A lot of people think it's like soda cans or whatever. Not soda cans, but like soda bottles, right? No, not usually. Microplastics are way more commonly generated as lint from polyester fabrics and things that are made with a high percentage of plastics within the fabric. As those fibers break down after repeated cycles of washing and drying, it gets broken up and broken off and sucked into the lint trap or blown out in the dryer exhaust. And once that lint ball reaches the dump, then it is free to be picked at by crows who use it as a plaything and aerosolized by birds and wind and rain and all this other shit. Wait, you want to get rid of agriculture? No. I said mass agriculture, which is a distinctly different concept from the mere idea of agriculture. Agriculture just means like planting a seed in the ground and maintaining the area around it so that it can grow. Like agriculture just refers to the continuous settlement on the basis of planting domesticated or close to domesticated crops. That can happen in a lot of different formats, and that can happen under a lot of different auspices. And like a well-stocked, well-maintained apartment complex garden with enough space in it and a good climate to grow in is just as good at producing food as the equivalent amount of land in rural area where it's all just farmland would be. In fact, it might even be more productive because farmland deals with the problem of like after the same land has been used for like a few years in a row, you can't really get any more good out of it unless you're fertilizing it or something. Well, I guess fertilizing it would be what you'd call it even if you're using compost or something. So like unless you're fertilizing that ground or allowing nature to refertilize it for you, then you've got to add like constant chemical inputs to that, and that process can actually make the soil worse over time, make it less capable of growing other crops, make it less capable of just growing things broadly. And so an argument can be made that if you actually did have more of an effort to start and maintain community gardens in all kinds of different places, and you started to get people used to the idea that they can make more of their food at home and get more of their food from like literally the areas around the places where they actually live, I think that you could reduce our reliance on mass agriculture by a massive amount. And you could reduce it such that you could do a lot more sustainable shit at that mass agriculture level. Like there are ways to do even that more sustainably than we do it here in America. People are lazy, it will never happen. If people are lazy, then why is the unemployment rate only 4%? You know? If people are lazy, then why do they work so damn much? That's the thing I never get. You guys notice something? Everybody thinks that everybody else is lazy but them. Everybody thinks these days that they're the last living working person. Not everybody, but a lot of people I notice these days falling into this fallacy of like the nobody wants to work anymore fallacy, or that people are lazy fallacy. It's like, wait a minute, hold on. That literally cannot be true. That cannot be possible. Like everywhere you go is staffed by human beings to this day. And even when human beings do end up out of work, like a ton of people's first impulse is to try and get employed again. And even when even homeless people don't just sit around on their ass all day. Like they'll spange for a while and then go walk around town and find a shady spot to rest out the hottest part of the day and maybe get them something to eat and then go spange again, and maybe that night they get drunk with some buddies or something. You know, like even homeless people want to fucking stay busy. Might not be doing like work, but like human beings have a desire to go and do things. I bet you've never worked 40 hours a week. I've actually worked more than 40 hours a week in my life, yeah. Well, like one of the first jobs I had after I finally finished high school, because I worked through the last 2 years of my high school career, but when I finally got out of high school, I started like wanting to have like a second job, basically, because I wasn't getting enough hours at the first. The place I ended up going, I ended up like quitting the other place to work there full time, because not only would they give me 40 hours a week, very often they'd give me 50 or 60. I hear something in the background. That would be the train. Normally I've got my Rode wireless mics connected, and Rode software is really good about cutting out stuff like that, but tonight it's on the tonight the phone is on the charger, so. What is it about a motherfucker making content online that makes people assume that we just must never have had a job or never did anything nice? Like, what the hell is that? I would get it if I was sitting around here like Bosch in a fucking really nice room with just beautiful mood lighting and perfect outfit and coiffed hair and everything, but like, even when I'm streaming inside, my set isn't that goddamn nice. You can still see drywall patches on the wall and shit. I feel like it's pretty easy to tell I'm working class just by looking at me, just by like listening to me for 5 minutes. Finally, it's not tweaking anymore. I'm sorry, it was tweaking for so long. Well, that's why I said when I was out of high school, did you not listen? No one has ever assumed I have no job on any of my streams. I can explain it for you if you want. Sure, you can try, but I also kind of doubt the idea that nobody's ever questioned whether or not you have a job or have ever worked a job. Because, like, even the person I used, Vosh, who is like a super successful streamer, has had that accusation levied at them from other successful streamers at times. You know, like Destiny's had to go through this same fucking rigmarole. With people accusing it. So I don't know, man. I feel like pretty much every streamer gets this accusation labeled or levied at them. I just don't understand it when it comes to working class people who are simultaneously obviously not wealthy, but also obviously not so poor that it seems like, that's the thing. If I was fucking like, if I was like 18 or 19, clearly living clearly living at home without ever having worked a job, with no income or whatever, and or if I was like in my 30s or something, and like just everything around me was like constant dog shit, and I was constantly being interrupted by like other people that I was living with or something, I would understand it. But like, I live on my own fucking terms. The stuff around me represents, I don't know, like a pretty, well, actually, frankly, I've got a ton more privilege and in some ways wealth than a lot of average Americans in my same position do. So, projection, jealousy, or something of the sort. That's kind of what I've always assumed too. But maybe Hear Me Out has some other explanation that doesn't reduce down to rote jealousy or something. Number one, I talk about work/life experience in relation to my moronic subjects. And number two, I make it clear what my profession is and that I am an amateur YouTuber. And number three, I prep all streams with purpose. Right on. Cool. That's funny you say that, because one of my examples for when someone said, I bet you've never worked 40 hours a week, was literally some experience from my life of working, but okay. I don't know, man. I feel like I do talk about that when it is relevant. It's just like, when you're talking a lot about like politics and news shit, how often is my experience in food service and retail going to be relevant? Well, it's incredibly relevant if I'm talking about how little working class people are paid in those positions, if I'm talking about how likely those positions are to be replaced. Like, for example, whenever I'm talking about automation and how a lot of people just don't seem to understand how much this is coming and how drastic a change it's going to be, a lot of times I'll bring up my experience at Taco Bell and how, like, for the first year of my time there, most of my job was customer service. And then over the second year I was there, it slowly transitioned away to being more about, like, maintaining the kiosks and taking some, like, cash from customers every so often to pay for an order, cleaning the lobby and stuff like that. Lobby and cleaning, that was always part of the job, but it became less and less about providing like a good front-facing customer service environment and more about providing like a weird intermediary between the restaurant and the machines, or the customer and the machines, I guess you might say. So I feel like it does get brought up sometimes. It's just not going to get brought up every 5 minutes, because it's not going to be relevant every 5 minutes. Like, if I'm talking about a religious topic, how often is anybody's work experience going to come up unless they, I don't know, maybe if they worked for a church, or if they were a pastor or something, I guess it might be relevant. I gotta agree with Hear Me Out. You speak about life and gloat about the small jobs you had shows you don't have a grasp on reality. Okay, cool. So you're part of the 107 people watching and supporting somebody who doesn't have a grasp on reality. Cool. Well, glad to know you're here. And also, I just want to say, like, do I say this? Is this gonna be mean? Nah. I wasn't saying it as an insult, I was just providing context from my own experience. Well, I didn't think you were being insulting, I just don't know if I agree with the reasons stated, because I do think I bring up my work experience and life experience whenever it's relevant. I'm just not one of these people that wants to attach every single fucking thing to some personal event. In fact, I think it's worse for a person's arguments when they do that. I prefer to ground the things that I believe in, like, historicity and science, right? Rather than, well, I was in this one place one time and I did this one thing, so I know that this is the truth because that, right? Now, if I've got a personal anecdote that happens to back up some data-backed point or some historicity-backed point that I'm making, I'll of course bring that personal anecdote up. But that's usually just to get through to the emotionality of people who are unwilling to listen to data-based arguments. You understand? As far as the job thing goes, though, yeah, I don't work currently for an employer. I'm an independent contractor with Alphabet Inc. Insofar as I have a Google AdSense account that I am paid out from every month, or at least that I've been paid out from every month since I got monetization and made my first 100. I don't know. I don't feel any shame from that. In fact, to me, I feel it is a point of pride that I've been able to, through a combination of just sheer obstinance and applied skill and, many hours of deliberate practice, I've been able to make something like an independent, self-owned business for myself that I can invest in and see returns from. That I have invested in and seen returns from already. If I wasn't paying my bills with this shit, I guess I would understand why people are like so vicious about it. And ultimately, I don't really care that much, except that it's been a good source of conversation here tonight. But I guess it's like the fact that I've clearly been able to keep doing this at the rate I've been doing it for so long, and that there are still some people who've been chatting in here for fucking 6 months at this point that don't seem to get it, right? That don't seem to get the connection. Oh shit. Are you a boy or a girl? I'm a girl.
Stopped when I did last time is because I was getting tired. But I don't want to.
Man, TJ, why? I don't even understand TJ sometimes, man. Okay, so Into the Fray, aka the amazing aka atheist, aka TJ Kirk, recently released a book. It's called Sexbot Uprising. You guys should go check it out. Buy it if you're into weird dystopian fiction with an erotic twist, I guess. But he wrote a book recently, and it's being absolutely savaged, in his words, by YouTube critics. Now, I looked into who these critics were, and they've got like 14 subscribers. Like, why does he care? The review he's responding to has like 95 views. I don't know, man. You know what? I actually kind of admire it. I like, because it's just like, that is an actual genuine love for the shit you do and a willingness to defend it to anybody. And I can relate to that. So I don't even know if I'm making fun. I'm just, mind is blown. It's to draw attention to his book. It's an ad, girl. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, okay. Yes, but also, TJ's an egotist. So the second a review of his book got recommended in his feed, he was like, Sexbot Uprising's been reviewed? Why does he care? TJ has an ego the size of a Boeing 747. I know. I love it. I really do. Like I said, it's one of the reasons I relate to him. One of the reasons I relate to them is because they've got just this giant ego. But unlike, and once again, right, here's the detail that makes it relatable. Unlike most people who have a giant but fragile ego, it's less like a 747 and more like you ever heard of that German tank, the Rat, that the Nazis wanted to build? That giant, massive fucking tank that would have been like the size of a fortress and would have required like 2 locomotive engines just to move it at like 2 miles an hour. It's like that thing. Massive and impenetrable. And I'm the same way. I honestly don't remember seeing The Amazing Atheist. It's been so long I don't even remember his angle. Well, originally his angle was all about just dismantling and deconstructing religion and faith-based institutions, and then he kind of moved on to like an anti-SJW thing for a while. But then when it became obvious that like the anti-SJW thing was being weaponized by alt-right grifters and weirdos, he kind of like distanced himself from that and started making like openly leftist content. At this point, he's made several videos that are openly dedicated to the fans of his anti-SJW content, being like, you guys took this in a really absurd direction. I was never anti-trans. Here are all these fucking videos of me from 2011 talking about trans rights, talking about gay rights and all the shit. So he was never like anti-social justice, which is, I think, where a lot of people stopped watching TJ right around that time because they were like, oh my god, he's just becoming a chud. But in reality, that's not what was happening. And what ended up happening instead was kind of like the weaponization of a particular type of content that I don't think only TJ was making, but I think we can kind of fairly credit him for the original video that kind of set off the anti-SJW genre, which was, it's only sexist when men do it. You can look it up if you want to. That kind of set off the genre and kind of pointed it in that direction. But ultimately, the points that he made in that video were actually pretty good points. And it was basically a video against misandry, which, you know, like cultural misandry can become an issue. Like it can be a thing that hurts people. So, but like a lot of the talking points that got popularized alongside that kind of content, and that like even some of the talking points that TJ would make in certain like submissions of his into that content sphere, eventually some of those arguments got weaponized against the very marginalized people, some of the very marginalized group that TJ themselves like is a part of. So complicated person with a complicated legacy, and I wish more people understood that a person can have a stance more complicated than like it appears on the surface, I guess. If I was in 20s without a family versus 45 with a family and their expected lifestyle, let me see here. What now? And their expected lifestyle and mortgage and kids in college, I would probably try just YT full time. Oh, there you go. And that's basically the position I'm in. I mean, I have a kid, but like right at this point in his life, he's not at a super duper expensive stage in his life. I don't have a mortgage, and I don't expect to have one anytime soon. I don't have to pay rent. No, like neither does anyone else in my family. It's inherited land, thank goodness. It's not a ton, okay? I'm not rich. I'm not fucking sitting here with 2,000 acres ranting at you guys like I'm working class, okay? It's 2.5 acres, and most of it is held by other people in the family. The usable land that we have, I think, amounts to like 1.75 or something. So, it's not a ton, but it's a lot more than the average American has these days. Like, even a lot of homeowners don't have that much land, which sucks, right? That just doesn't sound like it's not. That's nothing. That's not enough to make a crop for market. It's just not. There's nothing you could grow. Loofahs, maybe? I guess you could, if I covered all of the land in loofah crops, maybe I could make enough, loofahs to make a living off of loofahs, but, you know, I wouldn't be able to grow any food crops for myself in my garden. That wouldn't be feasible. So, but it is enough space for my family and I to grow enough food for us to supplement, I would say 20% in a bad year of our grocery budget and up to 80% in a really bad year, if you know what I mean. Like if the year is like really, really bad and prices are really, really high at the grocery store and like we have to put like a commensurate amount of energy into the garden instead, then we can supplement a ton more off the stuff that we can grow, which is a position that a lot of people aren't in, and it's something that I'm trying to take advantage of. Not in a bad way, but in a way like I know that I'm in kind of a position of privilege, and if I play my cards right, I can eventually turn that into a rewarding career that I'm actually interested in and a life that I enjoy living, while also making myself more available and more useful for the sort of community activism and organizing that I want to do. Cool sailor shirt? Thank you. Food as an industry is violence and deeply personal? Yes. Yes. Just like I was like, how do you survive on YT? And you explained it wasn't a diss. Yeah, no, I get it. Like I said, I didn't think you were dissing or anything. I just... I wish other people were as understanding as you tend to be. Even when we disagree, I find that you're pretty civil, which I do appreciate. And that we tend to disagree with grace, which is also refreshing. So I didn't think you were dissing. I just wanted to clarify if anybody was listening and they're like, does she really never? I just wanted to clarify, like, yes, I will. And you notice that was the only point I argued with you on either, right? Was the whole working thing. It's like, well, okay, hold on, I do, but it just doesn't happen as much as it probably does for a lot of other people. Depending on what you're talking about, like if I was talking about more life stories, which is honestly, when I first started this channel, that's mostly what I wanted to do. It wasn't until like I started having more political conversations that I started realizing I had such a knack for it. I always knew I liked it, but I didn't really know if I was going to be good at it until I had a few publicly, and I felt like I did pretty good, and other people seemed to think so too, because I had pretty good sub numbers after those streams. And then what really set it off was a stream I had around this time last year, or maybe a little earlier, where it was actually, I think, a year and 2 months ago or something. I did a stream where I put, like, the title was all caps, like it usually is now, and I had, like, some breaking news in there, because I was like, holy shit, I need to talk about this. And that stream, I won't say it went viral, but it definitely went places. And I had a huge boom off of that, and the streams that happened after that and shit. And I imagine if I was talking about more life stories and kind of the stuff I've been through, then I probably would talk a lot more about my time living in a minivan, you know, for 2 years, or when I was working at Taco Bell for 2 years after I was, you know, able to recover from homelessness and get housed again. Maybe I'd talk more about the factory that I quit in order to do this full time. Maybe I'd talk more about the many different food service jobs I held before, but it just doesn't come up that much because mostly what we talk about here is stuff that, like I said, I prefer to ground my arguments in historicity and data rather than my own personal experience, unless I feel like somebody isn't listening or is incapable of registering the data or the historicity, or like if that argument's just not going to make any weight for them, then I will use a personal anecdote if I have one as a supplemental. It's funny though, because like I said, when I first started this channel, well, not started this channel, but when I first started like streaming like this, really, big part of what I wanted was just like an audience that I could tell my stories of the road to. But I guess as I've done more YouTubing and more talking to people and having these conversations, long drawn out things like this, like we've just captured a different type of audience and a different type of interest, and I still bring those stories up, but it's usually after the stream is chilled out and I'm starting to think a little more esoterically. Sometimes it's just when I'm really stoned. Bro needs to find Jesus. I guess you weren't around for the religious rant earlier, huh? I will never be a member of your church. I wouldn't want to be a member of your church. If heaven is full of people like you, then I'm glad I'm not going. Okay, well, your paper thin skin, Karen, Maud, Dan timed me out. Dan is great for your growth. No one gets timed out on my channel. Talk to you later. I mean, if nobody gets timed out on your channel, you're eventually going to get banned for fostering a TOS, like, violating environment in your chat. So I just don't believe that. And I don't really have much reason to believe that, given that you have half as many subscribers as I do. You know, just saying. If my paper-thin skin is so bad for my growth, then why have I had consistent growth over the last 6 months since I've made them a mod? Do we want to look at my numbers? Because you seem a little butthurt, friend. Bad for my growth, but views. 353,000 over the last 28 days. Let's just see. 353,000 views over the last 28 days. 783,000 views, so almost a million over the last 90 days. That's 5% more than the previous 90 days. Over the last 365 days, we've got 4.9 million views. But I guess they're not good for my growth. See, I just can't buy this. Hear me out. Dirty Dan, why did you time hear me out? Yeah, I can look at your question, Matt. Give me 1 second. Let's see here. Phoebe, you watched TJ's video, Getting Old, Smoking, Israel Rant, Plattner Dropout, AI Art Rant? Yes. Yeah, I did. Yeah. Yes. Oh, okay. In his screed of a personal insult, he spread some misinformation. Alrighty, let's see here. I'm gonna read back. We're gonna read back. We're gonna read on back. So he said, well, all of my relatives are farmers. Guess what? If they don't make food, no money. You might be a fucking moron. So, Dirty Dan, or not Dirty Dan, sorry. Hear me out. How often do you get away with it? Like, how often do you really get away with insulting people's mods, like directly to them? Like, I feel like that's generally seen as a disruptive thing. I don't know, man. Like, I usually don't want people banned merely for insulting someone, but On the other hand, I have told my mods before that they can feel free to ban somebody who antagonizes them personally. So, I don't know, maybe just don't antagonize the mods? Like, you're here to have a conversation with me, hear me out. If you want to have a conversation with the other chatters, I guess that's fine, but ultimately, if you're going to target somebody with a wrench, I don't know, I guess I'm not exactly shocked if they choose to slap you with it, you know? You're the one who's antagonizing a wrench, man. In response to me talking about food, seemed pretty toxic, worthy of a 30-minute timeout, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't disagree with the decision. I mean, like, yeah. It seems like you were getting, like, really defensive over something that Dan said for, like, no good reason. Well, you're just giving them engagement. Yeah, that's what all of you are doing. And no matter how many times I say that, it doesn't change the numbers or the statistics. People are going to keep giving me engagement because I'm an interesting person capable of making my points with passion and clarity. Oh, you know what? It's getting pretty late, so let's go ahead and switch over to members only mode. Because that's normally something I do at an hour in, and we never even switched over. So now I'm switching over. Members and mods. I love engagement farming for Phoebes. Yeah. I love it too. I love it when you do it for me. I want your opinion. Maybe you can listen to the video on your phone and you can react to it. If I gave you a timestamp, could you react to it? Yes, Matt. Give me the timestamp. I'll pull up the video. I went into my chamber. For to take a slumber, I dreamt of golden jewels, for it surely was no wonder. Alrighty.
And you have a politician like Graham Plattner, who was virulently anti-Israel, massively against what Israel is doing in Palestine, massively against the war that Israel dog-walked our president into, and he gets slapped with these sexual assault allegations at the most inopportune moment for the political left and the most opportune moment possible for the political elites within the Democratic Party.
Okay, so I think I already know where this is going, and I'm gonna, because I remember watching the video, and I did want to respond to this on stream, so I guess it's as good a time to do it as any. Maybe I should text TJ and tell him I'm responding to one of his videos. Maybe he'll come watch this. No, but seriously, I think I do agree with him on the timing here, and there's even some evidence to believe that it was indeed Democratic Party insiders that got Jenny Perico. I forget how you're supposed to pronounce her name, and I apologize for that. But like, there is some evidence to believe that it may have been a Democratic insider who convinced her to like come forward with the full breadth of the story. And I have to say that it's hard for me to imagine that that didn't come from a place of wanting to protect like the interests of Israel over the interests of the American working class. I'm not saying that Graham Plattner isn't a rapist. It seems pretty obvious from the reporting that he is, and it's pretty obvious from people's attitudes and reactions that even if he wasn't, that like the vibes aren't there for him anymore. But I don't think that this was motivated by some genuine interest on the part of that Democratic Party insider or the Democratic Party elites to maintain a better image within the Democratic Party or to make sure that the voters of Maine get someone who really represents them. It was not like a genuine interest in democracy that led them to push for this. I agree with that. I don't know. I don't quite remember what else he says, but I do agree that the timing makes it incredibly suspicious. The fact that we know Jenny Perkiso was in contact with Democratic Party insiders, some of which were at a pretty high level, also makes it kind of, but I don't, like, there's so much correlating information that I don't think it's made up. I don't think it's a fabrication or anything. I just think that it's, not really a coerced accusation, but I think it was a pressured and timed accusation. Maybe not on the part of Jenny, but on the part of whatever Democratic insider kind of pressured her to leak that to the press. Not leak it to the press, but to like fully discuss it with the press. Thank you, How to Disappear. Welcome, How to. What about the little hints in the policy? His platform had all the mealy-mouthed weasel words, like no more sense wars. I think you mean no more senseless wars. I don't know, like, that doesn't seem mealy-mouthed to me, but maybe I'm misreading it. Anyway, I want to react to the rest of what we saw here.
Post on Instagram where someone was saying, if you're the kind of person that asks why a woman would wait to divulge rape accusations, then you are a rape apologist.
Okay, now that is bullshit. Okay, so I don't think that someone is a rape apologist merely because they doubt that. I think that they could just be a moron. They could just be someone who is smart in a lot of areas but doesn't know that particular thing. Like, yes, there is a thing that happens where, like, people who are assaulted, like, most assaults never get reported. That's something you learn, like, when you start learning about the human condition and sexual assaults and crime rates and shit. Most sexual assaults don't get reported. And even when they do get reported, it's pretty common for them to be reported pretty long time after the fact. And there's lots of reasons why someone might withhold that information until some later point in time. Now, that being said, one of the reasons why I think people should go ahead and report and do whatever they have to make themselves safe in the interim is because the sooner you report something like that, the higher the chance that somebody can actually be apprehended and prosecuted for that violation of trust. But I don't think it necessarily discredits or disqualifies someone's accusation merely because it happens years after the supposed event occurred, right? It could very well have occurred and they felt entrapped by that person or intimidated by them in a way that made it difficult or impossible for them to be comfortable with coming out with that information.
And in the sort of broader sense, I agree. there are many reasons why a woman may not come forward with a rape accusation in our society.
Exactly.
But in this case, that line of rhetoric is being massively fucking disingenuous. And anybody out there proffering that shit should be boiled in his own fucking pudding. Go fuck yourself, you stupid motherfucker. Because this is not just a matter of her waiting. This is a matter of her waiting until this man is so entrenched in the process of running for Senate that the voters of Maine now will get no say whatsoever in who will represent them on the Democratic side. News. The Maine Democratic State Committee overwhelmingly voted in favor of a 600-plus person nominating convention to replace Graham Plattner in Meeson. DSC had a long emergency meeting Wednesday, then took a vote. You know what that means? That means that 600 political insiders within the Democratic Party will handpick his replacement. There will be no primary. There will be no process. The will of the people.
Okay, so I don't agree with what TJ said a few minutes ago about being boiled in your own pudding if you're proffering that line right now and the way things are going. I think that it is important to bring up that Jenny Percoso could have had a number of reasons why she didn't, want to come out. And, maybe she thought that the allegations, because here, if it could all be 100% true and even worse than she said it was, and here's a timeline that I could see, right? Maybe she came to the media the first time thinking he'll drop out, he'll understand that the people he's done wrong to in the past are still around and are aware of his campaign, and it'll drop there, and maybe he'll still be able to be harbor master. Maybe, because, it's fucked up, dude, but people can have still some level of compassion or empathy for somebody who assaulted them. Somebody can want someone not to achieve political power, but not to ruin their lives. So I think it could be quite possible that she came out the first time thinking maybe he'll just drop out, but his life won't be ruined. And maybe she was able to be convinced by a Democratic operative when she came out to the next time, because she was, and once again, I'm still agreeing with TJ's underlying point that it was probably Democratic malfeasance and underhanded shit that caused this to happen the way it did. But I think one of the things they were probably able to use was, do you really want the man who raped you that night to be a senator for Maine? Because that's what's about to happen if you don't tell these people what happened. And I think that that is pretty fucking dirty and underhanded. Not on the part of Jenny, but on the part of those operatives. And it's, of course, orchestrated to make it so that it's just I guess my disagreements with TJ's statement so far mainly come down to a difference in scope, you might say. I think it's possible for two things to be true at once. That Jenny Percoso was assaulted by Graham Plattner exactly as she described and verified with therapist documents and stuff like that to the press, and that the Democratic Party kind of coerced that out of her, or pressured her into that, because they didn't want a more progressive candidate winning the Senate race in Maine, even if it would get them an additional vote in the Senate. I'm still skeptical of DSA's use of the Democratic Party as a launching pad. I am too, frankly. The longer I go along and the more of these like candidates who choose to align themselves with the Democratic Party failing, the more I wonder at what point do one of these candidates decide, fuck it, I'm gonna run as an independent, or I'm gonna run, you know, uh, like when when's a new party coming? That's what I want to know. I get it. The Democratic Socialists of America aren't a party and functionally can't make themselves into one. And really, like, the DSA as an overall entity can't form a political party because it's too decentralized. But a consortium of chapters could, in theory. And I just feel like the Democratic Party is, like, even with this Graham Plattner stuff, like, even voters like, you know, I'm not a main voter, but even a person like me, I'm coming away from this being like, God, the Democratic Party sucks. Because no matter how you look at it, either the DNC is, either way the answer is elitism, right? Either the DNC is so elitist that they didn't even want to, like, engage with Graham Plattner or his party platform at all, just like was the case with Zohran Mamdani, and they actively worked to undermine his campaign. Honestly, that seems like the only option. I was going to say something else, but that just seems like the only option. I just think it's like elitism out of the Democratic Party. They did not want someone that represents the interests of the people on that ticket. And they dug and dug and dug until they found something that could end that could end it. And so I remember what I was going to say. So it's either like the DNC didn't want to even engage with this platform enough to get to the point where they would have vetted him and you know, gotten him like to drop out or whatever, or they are doing what I said and just directly interfering in it, not just not doing the right thing, but actively working to undermine the candidacy. And I think the only reason it didn't work with Zohran Mamdani was because there just wasn't that much in his past to fucking complain about. Parliamentarian reform is secondary to the labor struggle. I agree there. But like we were talking about electoral politics, you know, in that comment I was responding to something you said about you know, the DSA and their use of the Democratic Party as an electoral tool. And if we're talking about electoralism, then I think a better route for advocacy for the DSA, if they want to engage politically, would be to try and form or find some like independent party. But yeah, insofar as like actually achieving change here in America, not just America, but worldwide, the struggle is always rooted in the class struggle. I'm just thinking of this quote by Eugene V. Debs. While there is a lower class, I am in it. While there is a criminal element, I am of it. And while there is a soul in prison, I am not free. I guess I think that's all the TJ response will do for tonight, since it's getting pretty late. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely think that the timing and shit is suspicious about it, but I don't think that that's got anything to do with Jenny, honestly. I think that, honestly, I think that it just sucks for everybody involved. Jenny is, she's going to deal with so much flack off of this, I guarantee you. There's going to be so many people that are pissed off at Jenny Perico. And that's probably one of the reasons why she didn't want to come out with it. But those Democratic operatives didn't care. The people of Maine are not going to get to choose Plattner's replacement. It's going to be chosen for them, which is also something I don't think anyone involved would have wanted. Situation where there are no winners and many, many losers. There's a Jubilee Dean Withers video you should do next time. Yeah, we can do that. I find Dean Withers so strange, TBH. Me too. Him crying at Charlie was cringe. Do you think Plattner should have just ate it and continued, or was dropping out the right thing to do for the party? Honestly, I think that dropping out might have been the right thing to do for him. And might have been the right move for, like, progressive values, frankly. I hate to say it, like, so much of politics is a vibes game, and at the point you're at where Plattner is at, and was before he dropped out, I just don't know how you recover that into a win. And if Plattner had, like, okay, so Plattner drops out, okay, the veracity of progressive politics is preserved. He's not like a case study that can be used as an example of why leftists have no morals. Because look, they elected this rapist. How can you call Trump a rapist when Graham Plattner's a rapist? Right? So, like he drops out, preserves kind of that. But imagine if he had lost, right? That sends an even worse message. Like, that says that, like, that can be used to imply in people's minds, both moderates and conservatives, that not only are progressives and socialists weird sex pests, but they're also ineffective sex pests, you know? So I think it was the right thing for him to drop out, honestly, regardless of whether it was true. Like, the vibes got bad enough that he needed to drop out for the preservation of the fucking politics he claims to believe in. The problem is, it's not like this will go to court and he will be judged, so how much of the truth do people really care about? Quite a bit. Like I said, it's vibes. Well, okay, maybe not quite a bit, but people don't really, because you're right, people don't care about the truth. What they care about is the perception of the truth. And in this case, the perception of the truth was that Graham Plattner's a rapist and needs to get out of the race. And when you're up against vibes like that, even if the accusations just seem perfectly timed, even if it is a July surprise, it's still like, what are you going to do? Like, keep fighting an obviously losing fight as you lose more, like, donor dollars? And because think about that too, tons of Graham Plattner's support was from grassroots donations from people all over the country, not just in Maine. I think Matt's just arguing that, like, even if Plattner was a rapist, there's a chance he could have won the election anyway because Americans are shitty and don't care. But I think that Americans are shitty and don't care, but unfortunately that also means that they are very susceptible to vibes. And that's the whole reason why Kamala was a non-starter as a candidate in 2024. She didn't have the vibes. She's never had the vibes. Ever, ever, ever. Kamala Harris cannot be a popular politician in America. She just doesn't have it. She just does not have it. Obama had a sense of humor, a relatable way of talking, just a kind of smooth jazz kind of voice. I don't even know how to put it. He just exuded charisma, dripped from the man. Kamala Harris has none of that. None of it. She's a prosecutor, and she acts like one. You know? She's like a rich Bay Area prosecutor, and she behaves like one, talks like one, looks like one, you know? And there will also be no justice for these women because no one is bringing charges to his doorstep. So how much do people truly care about Jenny? Well, I think people do care quite a bit on some level. Some people do at least. But yeah, I don't know how many people actually care necessarily. Because like I said, a lot of it's a vibes game and a lot of it you can't really tell. She's a cop and another capitalist enforcer. 100%, yeah. Cop Mala. Might have been better than Trump, but what kind of standard is that? That's the thing that always gets me. When people argue for Kamala by saying, oh, she's better than Trump, it's like, what kind of fucking standard is that? Cat shit doesn't smell as bad as dog shit. They're both shit. Dumbest shit I ever heard in my life. And look at Trump, a convicted rapist, a woman just got paid $5.6 million for it, and dude's still in office is what I mean. Well, yeah, but me and you both know, Matt, what it would take to get him out of office through the method you're talking about. Like, it would take a concerted effort on the part of the political elites, and we all know the political elites do not care about average Americans or average people anywhere on the planet. Maybe they care about the average Israeli, I don't know. Hard to tell, I guess it depends on the politician, but, you know, certainly they don't care about the average American or the average typical global citizen. We know that about the elites, the people that are actually in power for the most part, right? But when it comes to like the individual people, like I think a ton of people care that Trump is a rapist. But it's like, what are we supposed to do about it? Me and you both know the answer to that, but me and you both know it's also highly against terms of service and kind of a fucking crime to talk about it, right? Like we can talk about. The closest thing I can get to saying what you want me to say, Matt, is I think that we need to gather 30 million strong in Washington, D.C. and Wall Street and stay there on occupying the sidewalks and public areas until our needs are met. But that's as far as we can go, legally and on this platform. Fuck, I'm better than Trump. Exactly. Yes, you are an ambot. Enough is enough. We need to get back to being this shining city on the hill. I totally agree. That's one of the reasons why I constantly advocate for this big plan of mass action, because I do think we have it in us. I think we got the potential, man. I see so much potential in this country. So much. So much beautiful, beautiful potential. Yeah, I'm gonna get off here in a minute. I stayed up way too late. But yeah, we need a plan of mass action. I don't know if I'm going to be the one to start it or if somebody else will start it and I'll just ride along. But it needs to happen, and it's needed to happen for a while. a land of power and glory. In so many ways, that's true. Well, power and glory can mean very negative things, though. Power and glory are relative. One person's glory is another person's destiny-making failure. One person's power is another person's oppression. It's just sad that the only truth Trump has ever said is that he could shoot a person in Times Square and nothing would happen to him, and I 100% believe that. Yeah, I've said it before. And that it's a combination both of him having a cult-like audience that simply does not care what he does, even if they're a small chunk of the population, 31% maybe, it's still enough people to make a difference in quite a few matters, in quite a few places. It's a combination of that and the fact that we simply do not punish or arrest or meaningfully pursue any kind of negative behavior by politicians in this country. We just don't. For the record, though, I'm pretty sure pretty much any member of Congress could get away with a murder. Crimes mostly exist for poor people. This is one of the things that Marx pointed out. It's one of the things that Engels pointed out. It's been pointed out by all kinds of communist thinkers since their time and even before their time. And it's a truism that remains just as true today as it ever was. In fact, it's maybe more true today than it ever was, because nowadays there are more mechanisms by which wealth can earn you or get you unjustly some route out of justice. That mass media installs levers and buttons. Yep, 100%. Trump really broke the, let me see here. Trump really broke the mold on decorum and how the political game is played. Can we ever put the genie back in this bottle? No. No. Politicians, for the rest of our lives, Matt, are going to be trying to outdo that Trump energy. And they'll succeed. Because Trump didn't have that much energy. Trump was just the first person with that kind of Manhattan, don't give a shit, shitheel American kind of energy, and willing to bring it to the Oval Office and bring it to the fucking interview stage and everything. There will be more. There are people, like, just look at, dude, TJ. Just look at TJ. We're both fans of TJ. Look at how edgy and gruff and poetic, and even when being those things, that TJ can be. And now think about the fact that TJ, while maybe having been born to wealth, is otherwise a pretty average American who didn't live with that wealth his entire life. And if he's like that, and I'm the way I am, and you're the way you are, there's way more edgy people than Trump. There's people that are way more charismatic than Trump. There are people that are... But you know what, though? I say all this, but it was not Trumpian tactics that won Zohran Mamdani New York City. So I guess it remains to be seen. I think there's a chance that the genie could be put back in the bottle. There is a chance. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think it would require somebody... I don't even know. I don't even know. I can't even conceptualize. Like, I guess somebody like Obama, maybe. It would take somebody with, like, way more progressive policies than Obama had, and is calling for way more stuff than Obama was, but with Obama's sense of decorum and stage game and his sense of humor and stuff. Somebody like that was even better at it than Obama was, maybe, could do that. But do we even want that to happen? Like, let me ask you this. Was the time before Trump entered politics not more disingenuous than it is today? Or is it more disingenuous today? I don't know. Maybe it's always going to be disingenuous, because just the way capitalism kind of creates that incentive and political parties under its yoke. How do we know another president won't see how Trump acted and won't do the same, knowing nothing bad will happen to them? Well, hear me out on this, Matt. What if they do? But what if the things that they do are things that help out the average American? Like, what if the next leftist or progressive or DNC person or whatever gets in there and decides, okay, these are the new limits, these are the new rules. Well, I'm going to manipulate every bit of this I can and turn it towards our needs, turn it towards our political goals, and turn it towards actually helping the American people. I would be perfectly fine with someone as corrupt as Trump if they were, like, actually fighting for my fucking cause. Maybe not corrupt in every way, but you know what I mean. I feel like Trump is a good litmus test for our system of laws, but that means nothing if we don't fix those loopholes, and that is what worries me. Yeah, Trump is definitely, like, stress testing the limits of our system, and I think that a lot of those limits are showing that it's pretty strong, but that it's definitely got its weaknesses. I hope that the next person who's got the ability to do so, or listens to the people who demand this action, implements changes and fixes to make it so that that kind of thing is harder to do, and so that, like, our systems are stronger and more resilient to fascism. But ultimately, like, you gotta be honest with you, Matt, the biggest thing that prevents fascism is widespread and abundant social programs that keep people out of poverty and that encourage people to interact with people that are different from them and socialize regularly. That's really the best way that you avoid fascism. As long as someone is willing to give a troll attention, the only thing that can defeat that troll is a bigger troll. I tend to agree, which is why I think that people will continue carrying up the kind of, like, Trump attitude, or at least this more unchained kind of laissez-faire, I don't give a shit, I'm going to say what I want kind of thing. The Supreme Court would just lie and pseudo-justify slapping down progressive changes with legalese. Abolish them bitches. Well, hopefully that'd be one of the things a really good progressive candidate would be trying to do. Yeah, but we cannot wish and hope someone who's good at heart comes along and using Trump tactics for good. If they did, the next one who's a piece of shit could do the opposite. Is it really worth the risk? Well, number one, we might not have a choice. The die may already be cast. These may be simply the new limitations until the Republic is reborn, if you know what I mean. But, setting that aside, who's to say that the next liberal president doesn't use those things, but also uses their ability to uses their ability to get mass change done, partly to fix that kind of thing from happening in the future. Like, they could do that. They could use the loopholes in the first 2 years and then close the loopholes in the last 2 years. You know what I'm saying? Now you're thinking like Lenin. Use the tools provided. What's going on? The amount of shit our presidents can get away with is insane to me. Oh, you're talking about what I was saying about, yeah. Well, that's the thing. Yes, I do think I'm thinking like Lenin. Use the tools that are provided, yes. And you know what? I had a very interesting conversation the other day on The Line with Jimmy Snow and Javon Bradley. Javon didn't participate much, but me and Jimmy talked about it, and he said something there at the end that I really agreed with, and I was like, okay, yes, all right, I can agree with you there. Sounds like a good strategy. You know what? I can get behind that. And it was basically like, once whoever gets into power next gets into power, they need to not do this let's play nicey nice bullshit. They need to just fucking buckle down and get shit done using whatever the new rules are. The longer we keep those loopholes open, for good or bad, as longer people in other countries have to suffer for it. Yeah, no, I know. But once again, those loopholes aren't the things that are making life worse. It's the abuse of those loopholes to those ends, right? If you were using those loopholes for other purposes, you might not have those same outcomes. But yeah, so, no, and to what you said, how to disappear, I don't think that the entire class war would be litigated over 2 years. What I do think could happen is that a good progressive candidate that got into office in 2028, talking electorally here, I know there's other things that need to be done. I know there's things you need to be working on as your first priority, okay? But we're talking about electoralism here, and I think that if somebody like that was to get into office in 2028, that they could, within the first 2 years of their being in office, they could use a lot of the loopholes that Trump has created or demonstrated in the system to implement good, positive change that would help regular people, while also closing those loopholes that made it easier for Trump to abuse power in the next 2 years. You know, like fucking make things better, then make it harder for people to abuse the fucking system later in the future. And ultimately, the goal of that would be to encourage people to do more community organizing, to encourage people to do more labor organizing, because that's where the real battle is, ultimately. So much of the work you do is not done at the ballot box or even at a protest, but is done just in the everyday goings-on of your life. Should we take away the Marines from presidents? Yes. Punch back, then shut the door? Exactly. It's like, okay, these are the standards now. You will be held by them. These are the new modalities. Well, you put it there. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get off here. Thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you guys for chilling with me. I will see you guys later. Peace. The fuck out.